What's up, everybody? This is King Wizard here, coming at you with a discussion video, or more of a video about what I really want to see potentially in the future of Yu-Gi-Oh. Not necessarily like mechanic changes or anything huge, like a whole new mechanic such as pendulum summoning, nothing like that, but more of how they create archetypes and different archetypes that they could create, and general support of past mechanics as well. Um, so might as well just go ahead and get into it. First off, I would love to see Konami make a solid, really good psychic archetype. I feel like when psychics were released, they didn't do much on their own. They were just splashed in several different decks, and I still feel like that's how they are now. I guess a lot of people could argue that ritual beasts are a thing, but again, there's only a few of them that are psychics, and while they are essential for ritual beasts to work, it's not a purely psychic deck, obviously. Um, I would love to see a pure psychic archetype to actually work and to be relatively competitive. Maybe not, broken tier 0 or tier 1 even, um, but something that can actually compete, something you would expect to at least be at an event, be at a regionals or something like that. Um, Next up, I would love to see any sort of cowboy archetype. I feel like that's an archetype or a concept that they haven't employed at all, really at all. And clearly, I mean, you could obviously see why because of the guns. Both both Quick Draw Synchron and Gaga Cowboy here have been censored in the TCG in a ridiculously goofy way. Um, I believe Quick Draw Synchron has like a little ball inside of his gun to make it look more laser-like. Yeah, and it took off the iron sight there. But so censorship issues aside, I really don't feel like that's something that would be too difficult or too much of an issue for them to do. But I feel like it would be a really cool concept. I don't really care much how the mechanic works. I would just love to see an archetype based around cowboys, or like this old western bounty hunter type thing. I think that would be super cool. Um, and I believe these two are the only cowboy cards, really. And Quick Draw Synchron doesn't even have it in the name. Uh, Up next, I have Spellcasters. Um, I don't think there's ever been a solid Spellcaster archetype outside of Prophecy slash Spellbook. Now, up until that point, there was nothing really. There were spellcasters that were good, obviously, such as Chaos Sorcerer and Dark Magician of Chaos. And there were spellcasters that were good, but again, there was no, similar to Psychics, there was no good, solid spellcaster archetype on its own. And then they finally released it, and it was completely fucking just, everybody knows how explosive they were. They competed with Dragon Rulers when they were at their peak, so obviously spellcasters were really fucking good. Um, but outside of Spellbook slash Prophecy, there hasn't been one that is very good as a spellcaster archetype specifically. Um, some could argue Shadal's, but I really don't think that conceptually Shadal's are spellcasters. I feel like they're just the type, just to be the type. They're not like spell counter builds. They really personify that idea, and same thing with spell books and prophecy, is that they really personify the idea of like a magician or a spellcaster or a warlock. Um, and Shadals don't function like that at all. I know Shadals have their own backstory and their own lore, so to speak, but again, it's not reflective of them being a spellcaster at all. So I would love to see another spellcaster-like archetype. Maybe not one that was as good as Prophecy, but one that can compete, I guess. Again, kind of similar to Psychics, maybe one that can compete. Um, and maybe it doesn't even have to. Um, I know Intermage is a thing in the OCG right now, and it's coming out, and everybody's going crazy over Clown Blade and that type of stuff. But again, I feel like that's an archetype that by itself isn't very good, but it has one or two cards that people are going to splash into other builds. That it's not really a spellcaster deck. It just happens to be a build that's running spellcasters, um, or like one or two. Um, so yeah, and Dark Magician of Chaos kind of goes in that same subject, but I really think that, he got an Errata in the OCG, so everybody's expecting him to become unbanned, but I feel like even without that Errata, I don't think that if he was unbanned, that would make that big of an impact. Um, you know, I just don't think that. I feel like his old effect is very outdated. Even his current one, I feel like is still the Errata is pretty outdated. So I am in that boat with everybody. I do really expect him to become unbanned fairly soon, but again, it's not going to make much of an impact, and I don't think that he should have gotten an Errata because I still feel like his effect was pretty outdated, and it really wouldn't make much of an impact on today's metagame whatsoever. And really, that's what the ban list comes down to, is how much of an impact it's gonna have. It's gonna have on the meta. Um, Next up, we have. I would love to see synchros come back in a solid way. I would love to see any sort of deck that can utilize synchro summons competitively. Um, I feel like once they released Trishula and Bryonic, they kind of saw how broken or overpowered they can really make them, and ever since then they just kind of held off. Now I know these two aren't the only synchros that have been abused or have been meta at any point. I know Dark Strike Fighter was a thing in Synchro Cats, and it got banned. It's been banned for a while, but since it's got its Errata and it's been back, I don't think it should be at 1, because now there's only like one deck that can utilize it, and it's not because of Dark Strike Fighter, it's because of Royal Magical Library, and that's the Chicken Race OTK, using a Life Equalizer, I think is the card, and it's so silly, that Dark Strike Fighter isn't the problem with that deck. The problem with that deck is Life Equalizer and Royal Magical Library. And I know Six Samurai were a thing at one point where legendary Six Samurai Shien, at one point could easily have dominated. But ever since Gates got banned, Six Samurai haven't done anything since then. And as a Six Samurai player in the past, I know that very well, and I know how little of an impact Six Samurais have on the meta ever since Gate got banned. It's just been getting worse and worse as time has gone on, and Six Samurai or Shien being at 1 didn't help it, and it coming back to 2 doesn't really affect it very much because the deck itself isn't as explosive as it was without Gates. And so I feel like Shien, if anything, could come back to 3. Maybe Errata Gates and leave it at 2. Shien, maybe leave Shien at 2 and bring back Gates at 1, and then maybe Errata, or maybe bring Gates back at 3, but Errata and make it so you can only activate the effect once per turn, similar to Shien. So it's not completely broken. You can't blow up the whole field and go into a Shockmaster and prevent them from doing anything. Now I know there are certain synchros that have been used recently that have actually been topping in the past couple of months, and the main one being Void Ogre Turbo, using Malicious and Plague Spreader pretty much in a hero build, and getting out a Dark Law and a Void Ogre in the same turn. And while that is a huge play, but again, that's not. I don't feel like that's a synchro-based deck. That's a deck that has that splashed in. It's like splashing in a hero or like a Mask Change 2 into any other deck, and then running the Masked Hero equivalent for that deck, for the attribute specific. and calling it a hero deck. That doesn't really work. Um, so I really like to see a synchro deck actually come back. And I forgot to mention this. Goyo was, one of the first synchro monsters. He's probably one of the first really, really good ones at that. And he was banned, and he's been banned for quite a while. But, since he's been unbanned, he was brought to 1. When he was at 1, he didn't make an impact whatsoever, and even still him at 3 is not making much of an impact at all. Nobody's really running it in any top decks. I don't think any of the top decks can even go into it. It's just, the synchros that they have brought back that were once banned or were once overpowered aren't working anymore. And I'm not saying that if they brought back Trish and Bryonak that they wouldn't work, because Planet Synchro, they're at their peak since everything that they once had has been unbanned in the main deck. And they're pretty much, if one of these came back, they can probably do their stuff again. But Necros can pull off a Trish a lot easier with a lot less resources and much faster, I believe, than the Synchro Trish. And I know Necros are probably going to end up being hit in this next ban list, but still, I don't think that these two should come back. I just feel that there should be some sort of new archetype that can utilize synchros in a competitive way. And that's really all I have to say. If you guys like this video, please show it by thumbing up the video. Leave a comment down below if you didn't like it, if you have any general tips. If you want to message me, if you want to get in contact with me, send me a message over YouTube, or check out my channel description. You can send me a message over on Pojo, because I do frequent Pojo a lot. I'm on there practically every day, so I'll see your message. Thanks, and have a good day.